At second sentencing hearing, Manafort apologizes for his crimes. Manafort, 69, betrayed no emotion as he read his statement in federal court Wednesday from his wheelchair. The judge said previous report. Washington U.S. federal judge said give former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort credit for accepting responsibility for his crimes when she determines his sentence at Wednesday's hearing. Manafort said the judge was expected to tack on additional prison time beyond the roughly 4-year punishment Manafort has already received. He faces up to Prosecutor Andrew Weissman delivered a scathing assessment of crimes that he said spanned more than a decade and continued even while Manafort was awaiting trial. He said Manafort, Defense lawyer Kevin Downing suggested Manafort was being unduly punished because of the media. That a judge in Virginia last week to 47 months in prison, far below sentencing guidelines that allowed for more than 2 decades in prison, prompting national debate about disparities in how rich and poor defendants are treated by the criminal justice system. As U.S. District Judge Amy Berman Jackson in Washington decides whether the sentences should run consecutively or at the same time, she is likely to take into account allegations by prosecutors that Manafort tampered with witnesses after he was charged and that he lied to investigators even after he pleaded guilty and pledged to cooperate. A defendant in federal court normally can get a shorter sentence by pleading guilty and taking blame for his or her conduct. Berman Jackson said the hearing may offer a window into tantalizing allegations that aren't part of the criminal cases against him but have nonetheless surfaced in recent court filings. That Manafort shared Trump campaign polling data with Konstantin Kilimnik, a business associate the U.S. says has ties to Russian intelligence, and that the two men met secretly during the campaign in an encounter that prosecutors say cuts to. The sentencing hearings for Manafort mark a bookend of sorts for Mueller's investigation as it inches toward a conclusion. Manafort and Wednesday's sentencing comes in a week of activity for the investigation. The Mueller team has prosecuted Manafort in Washington and in Virginia related to his foreign consulting work on behalf of a pro-Russia Ukrainian political party. Manafort was the decision by U.S. District Judge T.S. Ellis 3 to if Manafort has been jailed since last June, when Berman Jackson revoked his house arrest over allegations that he and Kilimnik sought to influence witnesses by trying to get them to testify in a certain way.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park, pot.